This is what a happy compact Macintosh looks like. It's my Macintosh SE. This particular one's from 1988. The Macintosh SE was introduced in 1987, and as you can see, it's in pretty good cosmetic condition, as well as its keyboard and mouse. And it's running pretty well for a 20-something-year-old computer. I was able to restore this to how it is right now. When I got it, it was pretty yellow, as well as the keyboard and mouse. Everything was yellow and dirty, and I had to completely take it apart, clean the case, and retrobrite it to make it nice and white again. And I had to replace a broken hard drive. I still need to replace a battery on the logic board and inspect its capacitors on the analog board, but for right now, it's a pretty nice computer. And over here, we have a very sad computer. This is a Macintosh 512. It could be anywhere from 1984 to 1986. They were introduced in 1984 and discontinued in 1986. This computer, along with this weird pointing device, this 800k floppy disk drive, and this keyboard, I all purchased in one big lot on eBay for $2.25. Shipping brought it to about $30. So this is going to be my second vintage computer restoration project. The Macintosh SE was my first. This is going to be my second. When I bought this unit, I knew that it was non-functioning. The seller stated that when it was last turned on that it would make the boot up chime, but that nothing would display on the black and white CRT monitor. When I bought this, I knew that there was going to be problems with it, and that I knew that it was going to need some work in order to get running again. There's always problems with these computers. There's always battery acid to deal with. There's always leaking capacitors. I knew it was going to be hard work. The yellowing, the dust, the dirt, that's all to be expected. It's how it looks in the pictures that were posted on eBay. However, when I picked up the box that this and the peripherals were shipped in, I knew that there were going to be some big problems that didn't need to be problems. This computer is a perfect example of why you should never ship vintage equipment or computers or anything fragile for that matter in a box like this with absolutely zero packaging material or padding of any kind. If you're wondering what this is, it's an empty plastic bag. It was placed at the bottom of this box and is the only thing that resembles packaging material that was in this box when I got it. There's no packing peanuts lying around. This was the only thing protecting this extremely old equipment in the box, and this shipped all the way from New York. For those of you who are wondering, I don't live near New York. I live on the East Coast, but still, New York's quite a drive from me, so this traveled a very long distance in a very unprotected box, and as you'll see in a bit, it definitely suffered because of that. So yeah, just to clarify, all of these things were just freely placed in this box when I opened it. They were free to bounce around the box, and not only that, but there was nothing separating each of these components from each other. So they were free to bounce around into each other and make contact with each other, which is unnecessary. And my theory is that this hefty 800k floppy disk drive kind of acted as a wrecking ball and totally destroyed this keyboard. So in this video, I'm going to be assessing all the damage that these things received from the poor shipping conditions, cosmetic and damage that is detrimental to the functionality of these things. I'm going to start with the 512. I'm going to smoke test it. I'm going to turn it on, see if it boots the way that the seller said it would boot. And by that I mean it'll make the startup chime, but nothing will appear on the CRT display. I'll check the battery compartment in the back for any battery acid corrosion. I'll check the logic board for corrosion. I'll check the analog board for bloated capacitors, and just see where I need to go from here. I'll check and see if this 800k floppy disk drive works. I'll test it on my Macintosh SE because it'll work with my Macintosh SE. It has the right connector. It's an 800k disk drive. The SE has a built-in 800k disk drive. I have a 800k system disk, so I'll be able to test this and see if it works tonight. I can't, however, test this pointing device or this keyboard because they use proprietary connectors that will only work on the 128K, the 512, and the Plus. The Macintosh SE uses the Apple Desktop Bus ports for their peripherals, and pretty much every Apple product since 1986 has used that 80B port up until they started using USB in the late 90s. However, the keyboard uses this weird phone jack looking connector, and the pointing device uses this weird VGA looking connector. So unless this 512 decides to miraculously work tonight, I can't test either the pointing device or the keyboard. I'm going to start my shipment damage analysis with the 512 unit itself. I'm focusing strictly on the cosmetics of the machine and the condition of the case, because when I saw this listed on eBay, I saw that the case was dirty and dusty and yellow, but I also saw that it was physically intact, because dust and dirt and yellowing are all fixable, they're all reversible. However, a chipped, cracked case is not, and unfortunately this case is no longer pristine, I guess you can say. In the top left of the front face, there is a pretty noticeable crack now as a result from poor shipping conditions, and this is unfixable. Obviously it doesn't affect the way the computer will run or not run if I don't get it running again, but yeah, the only way I can 100% fix this is if I replace the entire front face of the computer, or if I somehow magically melt down the plastic and recast it, which I can't do. So yeah, I can glue this, but it's a shame that this happened. It's more work to be put into the machine. Moving on to the pointing device and the floppy disk drive. These fared the best during shipment. There's no irreversible cosmetic damage to either of them. They both are pretty scuffed up and dirty, but I can't really blame any of that on shipment because that's how they were listed, as being really dirty and really scuffed up. So these made it out alright, which is awesome. If this works, then honestly this will have been worth it, because these alone will cost you more than $30, and that's how much I paid for this entire lot. So even if I just get this floppy disk drive to work, this will have paid off. Last but not least, we have the keyboard, which unfortunately suffered the most amount of damage out of all the other components included in this purchase. And those of you who have tried to acquire a keyboard like this for the original Mac 128K, the 512K, or the Plus, know just how horrible all this damage is, because these keyboards are extremely hard to come by. Well, not extremely hard, they're pretty hard to come by, they're pretty rare. If you go online and search vintage Macintosh keyboards, you'll often find a sea of Apple Desktop Bus keyboards and almost none of these type of proprietary keyboards. And when you do find them, they're for some reason more expensive than the computer itself in most cases. It's bizarre, but these things are rare, and it's sad to see one get destroyed like this one was. This is the keyboard itself, and over here I've laid out the keys that were loose in the box. There's the cable, I'll move that over there. As you can see, this is a mechanical keyboard, by the way, and the switches, here, let me focus this, the switches themselves were actually broken off inside the keys, so it's not like these keys just popped off, they actually took part of the key switch with it. Which means that, again, irreversible damage. I could glue this, but if I really wanted to get this keyboard back in its original condition, I would need to replace this whole key switch board underneath, the black and the white. So yeah, this received some pretty major damage. The M key was totally vaporized. Here, let me focus this again. Here's the M key. Here's the other bits of the M key that were just loose in the box. This poor keyboard went through hell, and it's a shame because it's a rare keyboard, and I was kind of hoping that this would be at least a little bit intact, and it wasn't. Admittedly, the seller said that there were a couple keys missing. I believe it was this key that was missing, and I'm guessing that all of these other keys were ripped off during shipping, unfortunately. So yeah, that's the full damage of the keyboard. I don't know if it works. Again, it's proprietary. I can't test it on the working SE, and the 512 isn't going to work anytime soon. So the first thing I did was I removed the door to the battery compartment, and surprisingly there isn't much corrosion on the contacts. There was a battery in there. The battery's right here. It was leaking battery acid, but it looks like the battery compartment just needs a good cleaning, and that there's no real corrosion inside, which is good. I'll zoom in and focus and show you what it looks like. That's what the inside looks like. It's pretty clean. There's no corrosion, like I said, on the contacts. There is some battery acid though. I can see it like around the corners and stuff. So I opened up the Mac 512, and I have a flashlight pointing to the inside of the back case of the computer. And there's some good news and some bad news. The good news is obviously it's a signed case, which is pretty cool. It has the signatures of everyone on the Mac team. There's Steve Jobs' signature right there. There's Andy Hertzfeld's signature. Joanna Hoffman's signature. I think that's Joanna Hoffman. A bunch of cool people. Their names are on the inside of this case. However, when you get to the guts of the machine, there's a lot of corrosion inside here. There's a lot on the frame and on the floppy disk drive. I did take out the logic board, and it does seem to be pretty clean, in that there's no corrosion on it. It is dusty and dirty, same with everything in this computer. But I'm gonna put the case back on and smoke test it anyway, and see how it runs, or if it runs at all. So I'm gonna turn on the Macintosh 512k for the first time to see what happens. I'm not really expecting much to happen at all. I'm expecting the boot up chime, and that's about it. I'm not expecting anything to pop up on the screen, because the seller said that when they turned it on it would make the boot up chime and show signs of life, but nothing would display. So I'm just gonna turn it on and see what happens right now. So we got the boot up chime, and the floppy disk is making a concerning noise. Alright, so this is good. Huh. Well, interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so I know that the CRT works just fine, because I can see I'm tapping the computer. Well, there you go. Wow. 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 Alright, so I know that the disk drive doesn't work, because it's giving me the good old floppy disk icon with the X in the middle. Let me focus on that, but that's hilarious. And the screen is fading in and out a little bit. It's flickering, but interesting. Very interesting. Turns out hitting your computer might actually fix something. Well, that means I can test the, at least I can test the pointing device. If I'm careful and I don't unknock whatever I just knocked, I can plug this in the back, this thing right here, and see if it works. The kind of works. Wait, let me put it down. As you can see, the pointing device just barely works. It was working a lot better. Actually, I don't think it works that well at all. So this has been an interesting night. I was not expecting the CRT to work at all. I was playing around with the pointing device, and the cursor kind of randomly started migrating into the corner of the screen. I don't know if you can see it, but no matter what I do, it will not move from that corner. So I don't know if that's a problem with the pointing device or the connection to the port in the back. I don't know. Still can't test the keyboard because there's no text program I can pull up, because I don't think the floppy disk drive works. And I tested the 800k floppy disk drive, and unfortunately that does not work as well. The CRT is apparently good, and the analog board is apparently good. There are some capacitors that look like they need to be replaced. And there's the whole corrosion thing, so this is going to be an interesting project. It's unfortunate that a lot of stuff was damaged during shipping, but was not expecting to see any life from this thing at all. And the CRT is glowing. Yeah, so this has been Colonial Puppet. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good day.